That's what I'm talking about, son. Get you some of that daggone pie.
Woo-hoo! Looky there. There's your bug-eyed big one right there.
Getting started. We're getting started.
Here's what I'm talking about. Gosh dang gorilla.
Let's go, baby. Straight meat. God, look at that big one.
All right, welcome in everybody to the BAM Pod. I'm your host, Big Ed, and on the line tonight, I've got Mr. Zack Thompson, one of our pro tour anglers from the brand new BAM Trail. He's out there, he's fishing the Pro-Ams, and he's fishing the Pro Tour. So, you know what, Zack, welcome into the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Ed. I'm excited. Thanks for giving me a call.
Yeah, you know, we've been talking about the BAM Trail out here, and we're trying to talk about, you know, positive things that are going on out here on the West Coast. And we're really trying to get this thing amped up so that people understand how much influence the West Coast really has. And Mark has been really putting out some great, I guess, tournaments. And he's really in it to really make this thing a great tournament circuit out here. And by doing that, he's gotten some of the best anglers on the West Coast. And, you know, we started talking about this a couple days ago. I called Zack and we started talking about the whole thing and, you know, what's going on everywhere out there. And one of the subjects that kind of came up was all of the different things that are going on out there in bass fishing. And, you know, this is a show where we always talk about how, you know, we're trying to make you a better angler. Well, I think part of being a better angler is also being professional. And some of the things that have been going on, I would say aren't very professional. But here on the West Coast, and I think this is what's kind of weird, maybe not weird, but it's unusual to think of, right? The West Coast has no drama, and the East Coast and all these, the MLS, the BASS, they're just littered with it right now. And Zack, I would love to get some of your opinions on what you think is kind of going on with why we're so hungry out here and they're just having a hard time, you know?
Yeah, you know, it's a funny thing. Everybody thinks of the left coast as being a bunch of crazy liberals out here, you know, protesting, doing all this goofy stuff. And yet our tournament scene, bass fishing tournaments, we were pretty much free of all that drama. I mean, yes, there's issues with tournament circuits, you know, and there's been obviously some things in the last couple of years that were full of drama in terms of payouts or lack of payouts, things like that. But in terms of all the live scope drama and the rookies drama and just the old school anglers that are upset at the rookies coming up and doing this and doing that, you know, we're out here just trying to fish and, you know, we're getting none of that. All the great trails that we do have out here, BAM Trail, we got, you know, the One Bass with Billy Egan. We got MLF out here doing the series they do here,
the Toyota,
you know,
series,
and there's really the Toyota series. Yeah, there's really no drama. You know, it's amazing, and that's what we were talking about the other day. Is that all you do when you turn on YouTube, go look for fishing videos, your favorite YouTube fisherman. You know, it's Randy Blockett. You know, it's the Bilge podcast. It's something always coming up with something about why are these guys doing this? You know, how many screens do they need to have? Is live scope going to get banned? And I mean, out here, we're just, whether or not guys are using live scope, maybe it's just not as worried about out here as they worry about it back there because there aren't so many old school mentality. Maybe we're just a little bit more forward thinking to where we just, you know, we embrace new technology. I'm happy to use live scope, but don't have to all the time. Maybe our lakes don't set up for it quite as much, but if guys want to come out and fish something drama free, I recommend coming out and fishing some of the BAM Trail events. I mean, it's just a good group of guys. Mark's doing a great job, and we're just growing. We're going to grow next year, I'm sure, and drama free. It's amazing.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting you say that, you know, you talk about the live scope, and I know that's a major subject. And yes, we even had it on, you know, I've even talked about it on this show a little bit. I try not to get too much into the nastiness of it, you know, what people's, you know, total opinions of it are, but I've heard some pretty, you know, some very positive, and even some of the old guys, you know, talking about how much it's changed some of the fishing they've done. Boyd Duckett was on here talking about it's something you're going to have to learn. Gary Klein on here going, you know what, these guys are going to figure this thing out, and it's going to change bass fishing. It's changed it's changed it for him. But like you said, there's so many people out there that are, I don't want to say totally bashing it, but they're pretty negative about it. And I think some of that is that they aren't willing to, a little bit of what you said, they're not willing to change their old school styles and start into something so new and so technologically advanced as forward facing sonar. Now I got to tell you, our fearless leader here at Mark Lazane loves this thing. He's got his Garmins, he's got them set up. I've been out on his boat with him. He loves watching this thing, and there's so many guys on this tour that are out there totally doing it, totally watching it. And like you said, yes, we're a new tour. Yes, we're coming off of how do you say it? Kind of a negative influence from the last tour that we bought up and kind of brought in. And there are some people who are still on the fence on whether or not we're going to be different. What have you seen so far? Are we a different tour than what Wild West was?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a different ownership. It's a different model. We used Mark decided to use some of the format that a lot of the anglers liked, especially in the Pro Tour, the shared weight. You combine your weight versus the scoreable bass size numbers, and then it's a combined way to qualify through. So it's real exciting. That first event at Martinez, I led the tournament for 2 days on weight, but then on the final day, just wasn't able to get those big bites. Ended up finishing down the list, and Colby Pearson was able to take it that day, and that's what's really cool about it. I had a lot of people comment, "Oh man, if it would have been a combined weight tournament, you would have blown it away." It's like, yeah, but that wasn't the deal, and that's what keeps it exciting. And it's a really good format, and I think that it's going to grow. And I think people that were on the fence about whether they think it's the same as it was last year, just with a different name, I think they're realizing that it's not. And I also feel like, overall out here on the West, the economy is a little bit tougher this last few years for everybody, and participation shows that on all tournaments, not just the BAM Trail. So I think with things getting a little bit better and guys being comfortable, we're going to get more. But in terms of the no drama part, I think the only difference I can see, or the only real thing that I can point my finger at, is that people are just too set in their ways in maybe certain parts of the country, to where they feel like, if anything new is done on Gunnersville and there's guys out off the ledges and they're catching them when there's no current, it's so foreign of a thought to them that they feel like they shouldn't have to compete against that. Whereas I think out here on the West Coast, we just go out and fish, and if a guy gets on something like that and he wins, people are all congratulating him and say good job, and you beat me fair and square, and that's just how it is. Nobody's taking it personal offense, and I don't think we want to stifle the younger anglers coming up by trying to tell them that what they're doing isn't legitimate, or they should have spent more time learning. I mean, all I hear about is how the rookie class on the elites, they're all doing so well that all these older guys are saying, well, it took me 15 years to figure out this, and now these guys show up in a year with a live scope, and now they're kicking our tails, and that just shouldn't be the way it is. But to me, that just sounds like a bunch of complaining. And if a kid shows up and he kicks my tail, then more power to him. That's the way I think most of us out here look at it. And if you look at a lot of the anglers that have been sent out east from the West Coast, they're great anglers, and they're a lot of those guys are doing a little bit of both. They're embracing the change, and they're also really good at fishing. And I think that's something that the West has.
I hear what you're saying on that, but one of the things that I find interesting about what you just said was, you talk about the old guys are going, oh, that this new technology is coming out and they're kicking our butts with it. But I seem to recall a couple of young guys coming up during the old times and the old ways of doing it, a guy named Kevin Van Dam who came up and kicked everybody's butt, and he was using the old technology and he was pounding guys. He wasn't doing it a little bit by a little bit. He was destroying other anglers. Mike Iaconelli came up yelling, screaming, doing all this controversial stuff, and he was doing it with the old technology, but he was whooping people pretty good. You know,
That's true.
just because it's old technology or new technology or whatever, I think if you get your, teeth kicked in, you get your teeth kicked in, and it doesn't matter who's doing it or how they're doing it. And like you said, I just feel the same way out here. I mean, when Colby Pearson came in, he qualified through numbers. He had overall numbers and he made it to the last day. You had overall weight, you made it to the last day. He came in, and I recall after he, won, that you weren't happy to lose. Nobody's ever happy to lose, but at the same time, you were very professional, walked right up and was like, congratulations, dude, you really deserve it. You've done it. This was his first major win. He's competed very hard against you and a lot of other guys, but he's still a young guy coming up doing this thing. And he did it, like you said, pretty much fair and square. And
Oh yeah.
I don't see why there is, like you say, so much drama back there, other than the fact that, well, I just, I don't know. It's almost like they're acting a little bit like, 2-year-olds, kicking and screaming when they lose. And I'm sorry to say it, but that's the way it kind of looks right now.
Yeah, well, I think part of it too is how much social media has to play in things nowadays. And for some of these guys that maybe aren't cutting it on the circuit and they're not doing as well as they were in the past, they can start a YouTube channel or podcast and they can start, using what I call clickbait. It's,
Right.
you put a thumbnail up of, forward facing sonar, is it going to be banned? And you get a bunch of guys that either are opposed it or for it or against it to watch your video. And this is giving you some traction so that you can have more clicks and more input, given your way in the way of comments on YouTube channels to where,
Right.
you can keep relevant. I think a lot of it is the guys are they're not able to stay relevant as much in the fish catching as they maybe were used to in the past. So they're just trying to figure out another way to leverage the situation. And I think guys out here, I think we're a little bit more focused on the fishing and not, maybe it might hurt us in the sponsorship category in terms of, what guys are able to do because they're not getting quite as much of an influence on social media. But I don't think anybody out here is really trying to leverage the drama just to drive clicks, and that's one thing that I think is it's a double-edged sword, because if we were getting more drama, we'd probably be getting more people watching. But at the same time, do you really want people to watch just because you're bringing on drama? It doesn't, I've never been that kind of guy to try to make myself seem important by bringing up drama, and if something happens on the water, usually it's some guy cutting you off or
Right.
you think the guy jumped your hole or something, but that's an age-old problem that you have to deal with every day. But it's not something that I'm going to blow up on a YouTube video and show how so-and-so cut me off,
Right.
But, and I feel like a lot of the drama with all this stuff going on, particularly forward-facing sonar, is I think it's just driven for clicks. I think people are using it as an advantage to get more influence on their social media and getting more people to, because either people are opposed it or against it for the most part. And I just feel like it's a negative. And you come out and fish on the West Coast and you can just concentrate on fishing and you can build your brand in a positive way, and you're not going to have a bunch of drama, and there's guys, you're seeing more and more guys travel west from the east to fish than you ever have before. I mean, there's One Bass is a good example. The One Bass Trail, they're pulling people from Texas, they're pulling people from Arkansas, they're pulling people for all of his events because it's something that is a well-run tournament, and I think BAM Trail is headed in that direction very, very strongly. And I think as next year starts and in the following years, more guys are going to see it as a means to get to a higher level in the BAM Pro Tour, that we're going to start seeing guys that aren't who we would expect to see trying to qualify, and they're going to qualify, and they're going to see the value of what Mark's been doing, and it's going to grow from there. And I think having a little bit less drama out here, they're going to realize that, hey, fishing with these guys is a great situation for me and my sponsors and my profile. And, you know, I think Mark's doing an excellent job trying to build it the right way. There's no reason to try to jump in and make it a huge thing that's, you know, too many anglers the first year, that kind of thing, you know, and
right.
Yeah, I think it's working out really well. And it just amazes me. That's what you and I were talking the other day. It's like, why isn't there a bunch of drama here? Why haven't we heard about how so-and-so won a tournament and he shouldn't have been doing this, he should have been doing that? You know, it wouldn't have happened that way 20 years ago or some other crap like that. You know, it doesn't happen out here. And that's one, if I can be proud of any one thing in California, it's the professionalism of the guys on the BAM trail. When we show up to tournaments, there's not a bunch of BS. And I'm starting to realize how lucky we are to have that.
Hey folks, Randall and I want to talk to you real quick about choosing the right electronics mount for your bass boat.
Mark and I have been partnered with Bass Boat Technologies from the very beginning, and we know the quality and effort that BAM Foster has put into this company.
Custom, that's the one thing that I think about whenever I think of Bass Boat Technologies. Van Foster has spent years, not hours, years perfecting these mounts. He works with just about every bass boat company out there, most models for every bass boat company out there. He has spent the time working on these bass boats. So what you get is a custom fitted mount, not some mass produced universal mount for every bass boat out there. Van makes them custom fit for your bass boat.
Bass Boat Technologies also makes a lot of other custom parts. Seat pedestal plugs, tool holders, steering wheel spacers, and battery trays are all made with the same attention to detail that Bass Boat Technologies is known for.
Bass Boat Technologies is a vital part of our livelihood, and it's very important to your overall boating experience also.
Absolutely, and that's why we choose Bass Boat Technologies. Check them out at bassboattech.com. You'll be glad you did.
Absolutely. You know, that I've seen it, and I think it's them. You know, you can look all the way back to, you know, they come out and say, oh, forward facing sonar. But, you know, there was big drama around the Alabama rig. When that first thing, you know, when that thing came out, everybody was, oh, we got to ban this. It's the end all for fishing. It's going to cure everything. And it's like barely even a lure that people use. You know, they still use it, but it's not it's not what it was.
No.
You know, and now you've got forward-facing sonar. It's the same thing. Is it going to be the same way forever? Probably not. It'll eventually be on everybody's boat, and everybody has the same advantage. There's no disadvantage to it. You can go out and buy it. Go out and buy it.
No, I think the biggest thing is just some people feel like you shouldn't be able to see the fish bite. I think and they feel like that's some sort of cheating.
So should we have told that to Aaron Martins? Because Aaron Martins did that for years. He sat on his electronics, put his drop shot on the bottom, and sat there and shook it and watched fish bite. So we're supposed to go back and tell Aaron Martins, you can't do that because he did it.
But the difference would be that even with 2D sonar, you needed to be able to go find structure, get on top of them, and find fish. So there was still, I think, some of the argument is, and I'll take the con side of forward-facing sonar. Back then, you still had to be able to go out and find a hump. You had to understand where the fish should be, and you'd go out and find some fish, and then you could fish for them. And I think the older generation of angler, and I don't mean age-wise, just kind of that older mentality of angler, said, okay, you know, I can figure out how to do that, and it still took what they consider skill, whereas now, with forward-facing sonar, it's been shown dramatically that the majority of the fish don't live on the structure that guys have been fishing for 60 years. Most of the fish are pelagic and just swimming around the lake, and they're using structure as stopping points, just like everybody always talked about migration routes and this and that. But nobody was able to go out in the middle of the lake and pinpoint and be able to fish effectively for those suspended fish. Whereas with forward-facing sonar, you can very well and easily be effective on those suspended fish. And so I think the guys who are so caught up in how things have always been, fishing shallow or fishing deep, but fishing structure deep, they're the ones that are getting their butts kicked by guys who are fishing the in-between water where most of the fish are going back and forth. And they've unlocked the key as to how to use their electronics effectively, baits to catch them with. And it became hard for those guys to compete. So the only way that they can still compete is either to lobby to have it banned or jump on the bandwagon, which maybe they try to do and they're not effective at it, or they're just not willing to do and feel like I shouldn't have to, whatever that mental block is with them. And so the only way that they can get back at it is causing all this drama. Like,
Right.
It needs to be banned. Only one unit. You shouldn't be allowed to use it this time of the year, or there should only be, every other tournament or what. It's just, if anything, they should complain about the schedules.
Right.
And try to get the tournaments in different locations or different times of the year. But, it's not that just for somebody to go out on a limb like Mark did to try to run a tournament circuit.
Right.
That makes most of the guys happy half the time, which you're never going to make everybody happy.
Right.
There's a lot of work that goes into just putting on a tournament, period. And then you're talking about logistics of where you can go, where you can't go, who's going to allow you to have a tournament, and all the other stuff that goes into it. I mean, guys just need to, I don't know. The only way I can think of it is just to shut up and fish.
Yeah.
People would just shut up. That's what the name of the podcast should be, is just shut up and fish. Because if all you want to do is complain about this technology or that technology or how young somebody is because he's whooping your tail, and that shouldn't be happening because you feel like it's not fair, then go find a different hobby. I mean, I don't know what else to tell people. And it's sad, I think, that a lot of the really well-known social media guys, and some of them are from the West Coast that are transplanted back east, just want to jump on the bandwagon of, this is a controversy. Let's discuss it at every possible moment that we can, to where it doesn't even talk about fishing anymore. It's sad, and those guys were the ones who were coming up as young anglers and had to find their way fishing.
Of course.
At the time, and at the time there were certain things that were maybe, more unique or taboo that were from the West Coast, not an East Coast thing like big swim baits or drop shotting. But now you go back east and big swim baits are very popular, and it's not something taboo anymore.
Nope.
Every guy throws a drop shot. The Nico rig, when it started out here, was something that we fished a lot for years. And guys would just, guys I knew that fished back east, even when I went back east, like, oh, they just don't bite those here. That's just, you got to throw a big spinnerbait in a foot of water or something like that, and part of that was true, but the other part was that a lot of guys hadn't put in the time to show that those techniques worked. And now most guys are throwing an eco rig, or they're throwing a drop shot, or they're throwing a big swim bait when they're not live scoping. So,
right. They've taken the time to learn a technique.
Yeah.
And all you're talking about that's really, to me, that's interesting is, I mean, this has been, and I know that you're a person who's seen all of these, but you can go all the way back to the very first Bassmasters Classic, right? And you can watch those events, and those guys were using flashers. Okay, so do we drop all the way back to what would be considered the Stone Age and say, you know what, everybody can only use flashers because that's how you actually learn how to fish? It seems like they're just talking about how this isn't the right way to become a really good fisherman. There's a better way to do it. And the way I did it, that's the way that's right.
Right.
And I feel like that's just a bad attitude, right? I mean, that's just guys who, my way's right, your way's wrong, and this is the way it is.
Exactly. And it's more just going back to, at some point, I decided there was a right way. And
Right.
once anything changed from that right way, now it's wrong. And whatever else comes along should be set aside, because it should only be that way, and that's, I think, that's the biggest takeaway is these guys just don't want to or can't, evolve with the times. And so they're getting left behind a little bit. And the only way that they can try to be relevant is by bringing on a bunch of drama. And we're not doing that out here. And I mean,
Yeah.
I've been the young kid that came straight out of college was fishing, where, I won a couple tournaments, and guys were like, well, that kid, who's that kid? So now I'm almost 50 years old and still been doing it for 20, almost 30 years. And, I look at it like it's fishing to me. The reason it's the most wonderful sport there is because you're
Mhm.
always learning. There's never a time where you can actually sit down and say, okay, I've learned it all. I don't have to learn anymore. I'm just going to stop. There are people who do that, but they don't keep,
They don't evolve.
doing well. And so,
Yeah, they don't.
so
Well,
I'm,
they don't evolve. They don't evolve with the sport. I mean, this sport is
they don't,
always
yes,
going to be
exactly.
changing. There's never a
And so
time when this sport isn't going to change. That's just how it is. There's always going to be new baits, and you're one of those guys too. That's, if a new bait comes out, you have to know it. You have to learn how it works, and
yeah,
it's you have to understand that. And I think you're so dead on when you say that. The guys just don't want to evolve with the sport. They don't want to change. It's like, well, I just want to throw my Carolina rig and then win tournaments. Well, you can't.
right.
You have to learn how to throw something else, because just a Carolina rig is not going to do what it used to do. But when it came out, it was the brand new thing. It was the greatest thing, and it's still productive to this day. But it will not win you a tournament every time you go out.
Right.
You have to do
Yep.
something else. A jig has been around for how long? I don't know, since, the invention of bass fishing, there's been a jig, and it's still probably one of the biggest baits out there that catches and wins tournaments. But at the same time, there are a million other things out there to do, and you have to know. I don't say you have to know all of them, but you got to have a firm grasp on it. And if you don't evolve, well, like you're just saying, this drama stems from the fact that people don't want to evolve. Fishermen did
No.
not create forward-facing sonar. Electronics companies did, because they want to sell units, because they want to make it easier and better and different to fish. There's new technology. We went from flashers to 2D to this to that to this, and now we're up to this. What's next? There is it just, I mean, there's cameras out there, right? I mean, you can't, but you could, we don't allow you to throw aqua views in the water and just look at fish, right?
Well,
I
it'd be
mean,
harder. Yeah. Well, I mean, and really, yeah. I mean, if they're going to ban aquaviews in tournaments, but a lot, that's a whole. It's like who made that decision and
right.
why? Because you shouldn't be able to see what's under the water. Well, you're already using a 2D sonar. All you're doing is confirming what species is down there. It's the things. Like I said, my biggest thing is it's sad to see all the clickbait out there and all the use of the drama just to spur comments and views and likes and just polarize anglers into one direction or the other. And some of the guys that are doing it are, it's so, to me, it's so obvious that
Oh yeah.
they're doing it strictly to drive their viewership and polarize the situation. And most of the people that comment are not guys who they're fishing against. It's not guys that even probably fish anything more than like a Wednesday nighter, but they're the comments that get, the most views, and then they get talked about, and it gets recycled over and over and over again. And, it's really sad, but, I think we need to focus. I think we need to focus on, we're lucky on the West Coast. We're avoiding most of that. I think there's still a lot of good fishing information coming out of the West Coast. I think a lot of the YouTube channels and social media stuff that comes out of the West Coast is purely, the love of fishing and not the addition of the drama. And I think that circuits like the BAM Trail and the BAM Pro Tour are great ways for anglers to exercise their fishing muscles and get to compete on some really good tournaments. The Pro Trail, the the BAM Pro Trail and the format that we run, and the fact that we have an off limits, and the fact that we just show up and fish with no official practice day, really, I mean, you can have, I don't care how many transducers you have on the boat. When you literally show up, when you show up to a lake, even if you've been there before, and you literally put your boat in the water and start fishing, and you're on the clock, as soon as blast off happens, you know, you have to be using as much of your mental acuity along with whatever electronics you have, just to try to get on something right away, because there is no, oh, I'll spend a half a day going to look around. You know, I'm going to try to figure it out. It's like you put the trolling motor down and you're fishing for fish that count immediately. And it's like nothing else that we've had anywhere. And I think, you know, I think it's going to open a lot of people's eyes. And I just hope that that the economy throughout the country, but particularly on the West Coast, starts making it to where more guys have the luxury to be able to spend some money fishing like they did, you know, years past, to where more guys want to be involved. I've already talked to quite a few guys who didn't participate in the pro-ams this year because they just weren't sure how things were going to go. And they're seeing now that it goes well. And I mean, every tournament has a hiccup now and then, but overall, it's run very well. Mark's very, very approachable. He's very reachable. And he's very helpful. He's asking for anglers' insights and suggestions on things, you know, as we move forward. And I just think it's I'm lucky to be a part of it, and I'm happy to be a part of it, and I'm going to stay a part of it, you know. And then, you know, Billy is one bass, does an excellent job too. And it's just a little bit different format. You got the shared weight there, so if guys really want to fish shared weight, they can go over there. You know, I'm personally not a big fan of MLF, only because I'm not appreciative of the fact that their POCs or championship is always in the Southeast. You know, yes, you're fishing for $200,000, but as a guy from the West Coast going back and fishing a lake that there's going to be quite a few locals that can qualify pretty easily through their region, you know, to me, it's just not a return on the investment that I'm looking for when I'm fishing for tournaments, you know, but, and I think it shows in their participation numbers, because you go into the Southeast regions and you know, you're talking 200 boat fields, and you come out here and they're lucky to hit 75, which is sad, because it's not that Alan Gray is a troublemaker by any means. He's a great guy, but unfortunately the organization that he works for doesn't really support the West Coast. When you come to something like Mark and BAM, you know, he's directly supporting Western anglers. He's providing TOCs both for the Pro-Am and for the Pro Tour, you know, with boats, you know, and that's not something that he's doing out of the goodness of his heart, but at the same time he sees it as an investment to be made to make sure that guys see the legitimacy of the tours, to where guys want to fish, you know, and trying to take them to lakes where we don't always go. You know, it's a rough road to hoe, and Mark has taken it upon his shoulders to try to make that work. And it's not an easy thing. And he just needs the participation of other anglers, you know, to grow. And I think it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time.
Tackle Warehouse has been the premier online tackle shop since 2003, with a huge selection of not only the latest and greatest from the biggest brands, but the hard-to-find regional specialties as well. Tackle Warehouse. Click, save, fish.
Hopefully.
Well, you know, it is happening, and you know, you can see it. I know most people out there got the email. If you fish the organization, if you fish with us, you've just seen, like, he took a step back. Mark took a step back and gave himself a new role, and he upgraded, you know, Michael Bray up to tournament director for these events. And by doing that, what he's doing is he's not trying to get away from the tournaments. He's actually trying to step in and go, you know what? We need to promote the marketing side of it more. We need to promote and get more organizations, more companies involved out here on the West Coast. And that's what we're actually trying to do so much, is that for years, everybody's wanted, everybody's wanted California money. Everybody sees what's out here. They see what they can get, but none of these companies have really appreciated it and said, I don't know if I want to take a risk on, is my ROI there? And I think what Mark's really going to start doing, and you're going to see this happening, because we're headed to ICAST this year. We're going to go back there. We're going to check some things out, and we're going to present a lot and say, hey, this is what we're doing on the West Coast. If you want to be a part, come jump on board and be a part of it. Because this West Coast thing that Mark is trying to give you is that if you go to MLF back east, if you go to Bassmaster back east, you can make a living doing this sport. You can make, $150,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year in this sport. Out here, you're not quite there yet. You're not going to make this your career just yet. You're going to have to, if you want to be, an angler that puts on his taxes, hey, professional angler, it's probably not going to be in California. There's obviously some exceptions. Ishman Rowe's doing it, but he's still traveling back east to do it. He's still got to do that. And I know that he's one of the anglers that would love to be out here on the West Coast exclusively.
Yeah.
I mean, we just went to places like, like Yuma, Arizona, where we went down to Lake Martinez. We're going to Boardman, Oregon. We're going to all these lakes. And yes, there's some travel, but that's one of the biggest keys in the West Coast is that it's huge. There are so many places to go, and California isn't the only place. We want to highlight some of these. And eventually, over time, will there be regions that way? I don't know for sure, but it has been talked about that, maybe there'll be a northern region or a southern region or a western that sort of thing happens. There are so many great lakes. This just in California, there's enough to put a circuit on. Just in Oregon, there's enough to put a circuit on. Just in Arizona, there's enough to put a circuit on. If we can get those areas growing, then great.
Well, and then that's the thing. It needs to grow with participation. The guys have to be, there has to be a group of guys that are willing to enter those events so that those events can happen. To where if they're complaining now, guys might say, oh, well, we have to fish most of the events in California. We live in Utah, or we live in Colorado, or we live wherever. If those guys who are passionate about it are willing to spend a year or two showing their activity in the trail, and then they get other guys in the area excited, to where then, like you say, then maybe couple of the events head out that direction, because that's where people are getting pulled from. It's a fine line, and we're not the same market that the Southeast has.
No.
Bass fishing is not quite as large. It's not as popular, and you don't have the sheer volume of boat sales and tackle sales and things like that. But that's just a matter of the market. The market will drive what is necessary, and if we can grow the sport and get more people involved in tournaments, then there'll be more tournaments, and then they'll be where those people are living, because there'll be more activity. So you have to, one has to feed the other. Guys can't just expect there to be a circuit in Idaho because they like fishing in Idaho, unless guys from Idaho are willing to do something. And if there were people out in Idaho like Mark who wanted to try to grow something there, then that's what they should do. And if they don't want to do that themselves, they need to participate in something close by to try to grow out that direction.
Yeah, and that's what and I think what you said right there is opening up eyes and getting people go. Now, this is going to be past tense as I'm saying this, because this event, this show is actually going to air after this weekend, and this week it'll be next Wednesday, and this weekend we're going to be. I know we're going to be at Lake. We're going to be at Lake Almanor, right? So. And you're going to be up there, and I know that you know how good of a fishery that is.
Don't tell anybody where Lake Almanor is. Yeah.
But one of the really awesome things that's going to be going on, will have happened by now, is that Mark is doing that. He is opening us up, and we're doing on a Thursday. We're going to be up there, and it's going to be a meet and greet with the anglers. It's going to be, hey, introducing us our anglers, our organization, and everything else to the city of Almanor, and to the lakes around the area. Everybody can come up. Everybody can meet. Everybody's going to see these anglers and meet and talk to them and understand what's going on and touch all this fancy equipment and all this. And I think that's one of the biggest ways that we kill off some of the negativity about bringing anglers up there and fishing these areas is, hey, now I can go out and meet these guys. It's like, absolutely, you can come in, you can meet the anglers, and it opens up the eyes and it makes the community want us to come back. It's like, oh man, they came in, and when they showed up at our lake, all of a sudden we had a windfall of money come in because they also brought other people to come view, and they went out to lunch and they went out to dinner and they bought gas and they did all these, rented rooms, all these different things that happen when we come to these events. And the larger and larger and larger we get with more people showing up, just the better it's going to be. After that, we're on to Boardman, Oregon. We're going to go up in that direction. Then we're going to go all the way up to Seattle, up to Washington area. There are just so many great events coming up. And I think that's probably the biggest thing why we're so drama free out here is that we're hungry still. We still want this thing. We're not set in our ways. We're not stuck in oh, well, we've done it this way forever and that's the way it's done. It's like, no, we're constantly trying to make this thing better. We're constantly trying to make these tournaments more important, more interesting, more worthy for guys to come out and fish. It's like, don't overlook the BAM trail. Don't overlook, one bass out here. Don't overlook them, because we're trying to do something, and what we need is the support from the anglers. Just like you've said all this entire interview, we need you guys to come out and fish with us. We need you to come out. I don't care if you're in Idaho, if you're in Oregon, if you're in Washington, if you're in Colorado, or you name it, Yuma, Arizona. Come out and support these trails so that we can grow and we can actually become rivals with these big organizations, and do it the right way.
Yeah.
Do it the way where everybody, you guys are so, I waited and waited and waited for Yuma so bad, because it's like, I wanted to be there with these professional anglers, and it was no disappointment. There was absolutely 100% such professionalism. You guys were, everybody was happy for one another, and but it was still competitive. That was the greatest.
No, but and not only that though, I mean, that was one of the biggest crowds that I think I've ever seen at a tournament. It was unbelievable how many people came out to watch the weigh-ins there during blast off in the morning. It was quite impressive how many people showed up, and they were genuinely just excited to have an event that was large there, that they could come out and check out. And I think, the more we bring that to different communities, it just gives them a chance to see the excitement. And then, you get a couple of the younger kids to tell their parents, hey, why don't we learn how to bass fish? Turns into a boat sale, turns into a future angler, turns into another boat sale, and so, I mean, that's the biggest thing, getting people excited about it, and it's not easy to do. And that's where, again, it's like, it's unfortunate that a lot of the excitement right now in bass fishing seems to be all the controversy about this, that, or the other, and it really should just be about the fishing. If everybody embraced how great things are right now, because if you look at the state of rods and reels, baits, line, electronics, boats, I mean, it all makes it so much more enjoyable to go spend a day. I mean, you can buy a reel now, even a cheaper reel on the market, and tune it enough to where you can teach a 7 or 8 year old to cast it without much trouble. You couldn't have done that 15 years ago. I mean, you can set them up with a bait now, drop something like a drop shot or a Nico rig, and chances are they're going to get a bite, because it actually gets bit so much better than throwing a 3/4 ounce spinnerbait up against a laydown. And so, I mean, there's so many things now that makes fishing more enjoyable, and the fact that there is still a lot of content out there for kids or even adults to go out and see. Like, hey, you tell somebody to throw a drop shot, then you drive and you show them, hey, go watch this guy's YouTube video on how to throw a drop shot, and they can literally see how it works, and they can understand it other than you just trying to tell them. So there's so much of it that's positive. It's just unfortunate that the negative is what's really the narrative right now. And
Oh, you're absolutely
again,
right. Yeah, no,
I'm happy that it's not that way out here. I mean, if you go to a tournament out here, you're not going to hear a bunch of whining about, oh, who had the most screens on their boat, or oh, this kid bought so and so bought waypoints or whatever it is. You're just going to go out and you're going to see anglers that are just going out fishing, and they're happy to tell you how they did it, where they did it, and what to go try if they're going out the following weekend to go fishing.
We've paired one of the most iconic hulls in the history of bass boats with a proven lineup of trusted accessories. We're bringing you best-in-class value and performance, leaving others in your wake. Turnkey value, turnkey performance. The Pantera 2 is an overachiever in the 19-foot category. Once you hit the throttle, you'll feel the rush, and there's no looking back.
I fully agree. That is probably one of the nicest things about. I saw guys out there. Anglers were being approached by some of the fans, either Lake Martinez or even Oroville, and so they were like, "Hey, where were you catching them? I got to go back out there and fish. Hey, this is where I was. This is what was going on. This is what you want to try." They talked about it on the stage.
Yeah.
They were so open, so honest about it, and there was no holding back. It was like, why? I'm not going to be here for another year. These fish will change tomorrow.
Exactly. That's the thing. Yep. If you come out to one of our events and you come talk to me at the boat, I won't hold anything back, whether it's the first day of the event or the last, because number one, you're not fishing that event. So I'm not, I may not tell all my competitors that day, but I have no problem telling you guys how to go catch fish, because the only way that fishing, if I wanted to have larger tournaments in the future, or to see my kids fish large tournaments out here when they get older, the only way that's going to happen is if we get more people excited about the sport. And the way to excite people about the sport is showing them and telling them how to catch fish, helping them catch fish, helping them be, have a good day on the water. And I think all of the anglers, particularly the ones fishing the Pro Tour, are, that we all understand that and we all embrace it. And it's not something, we're not out there trying to be like, oh, you wouldn't understand, this is professional fishing. You just, no, it's really not that, it's not that complicated. And it's more decisions, on a given day. And we're happy to try to tell people how to go about spending the day trying to make better decisions and, doing the right things on the water. I had a kid come up to me at Martinez, and he was a very inquisitive young lad, and he asked me a million questions, and he was asking good ones. And I let him look through the boat a little bit. He found a couple baits that he liked. It so happened to be the ones that I had been using, but the tournament was over. It was the final day. So, he took a couple bags of baits. I talked to his dad about how to, where I was at, and because they were from that area, and hopefully they went out and put some of that information to use, and maybe that kid will be the next Kevin Van Dam. You never know. But I think we really try to don't be afraid to come up and approach anyone at a tournament. There's especially the guy who won or did well, because all we want to do is try to perpetuate the excitement in the sport to the other, to the fans, to people that are just there to try to learn, to whoever's there. So, never be afraid to approach an angler at a weigh-in, because it really kind of makes us feel nice because somebody wants to come talk to us. And at the same time, you'll get a really good tidbit of info, even whether what's working or what's not working, and then you can use that on the water.
Absolutely. And there were some great things that Martinez was such an eye opener for me, just to see the fans. Like you said, it was such a great turnout. I mean, we had one young guy that was up there. He's like, I'm going to be up there. I'm going to be doing this next. And, me being me, I brought him up on the stage. I said, really? Because he's calling all these guys out. Let's bring him up here on the stage and let's, see what he has to do. He came up on there. He's talking about it. And like you said, he may be up there. And I told him, I said, hey, I want to see you up here in 5 years. I want to see you up on this stage competing against these guys and doing this thing. We have some great sponsors out there. Like Corning was out there. They had their angler out there. He was giving away Corning gear and that sort of thing. This is what you're talking about when you talk about growing a sport. And the West Coast just has never really done it the way that I feel like it should be done, but I think we're on the right path now. I think that I watched what Wild West had. I liked what they were doing. It's unfortunate that it turned out the way it turned out, but I'm glad that Mark bent down, picked up the reins, and said, you know what? Let's put it back on the trail because this is great and it should happen and it can happen. And I think that, like you said, participation, watching these young kids come up and bringing them out and saying, let's do this. Let's go out and be open, be honest with them, get them fishing because they can't do that. You know, if they, I don't care who you are. If you go out and you're going to play football as a kid, that's great. You're probably not going to go talk to Patrick Mahomes and see what he has to say. You know, Travis Kelce's not going to come over to you and start talking to you about how he's, you know, what he's doing to win a Super Bowl. You're probably not going to have that one-on-one, but with this sport, you can still have that. These guys are open. They're honest. They're there for you. They're so approachable. And most every one of them is very professional. And that's what I think, you know, this is where we're going. Mark has been doing this. And that's what we really wanted to talk about on this thing was, hey, you know what? The West Coast is here. You guys back east, even if you're sitting out there right now. I talked to Fred Rambanis, you know, 2 weeks ago. He had an interview on here and he talked about it. He's like, you know what? I want to come out there and fish. Maybe if you got a Clear Lake event going on or something in October when I got a little opening, maybe I'll show up and fish one of those. That would be great to see one of our West Coast guys that went to Oklahoma, went to Arkansas, went to Oklahoma, and now he's come, you know, would like to come back. I mean, guys like Cody Meyer, Ish Monroe's still out there fishing. There are so many great anglers out there fishing where they have to make money that I'd love to see him come back here and start making money here.
Well, I think we're going to see that in the next couple of years. I think we're going to see guys who maybe, you know, don't want to try to qualify for the elites or have been on the elites and don't want to stay there. They want to fish something large. And with the way things are now, you know, you can, if you can run the proper style of social media, you know, you're still getting as much outreach, if not more, than you are from a good tournament finish, you know? So it's not as much now about tournament finishes as it had been in the past, where you can still be an influencer without necessarily fishing on the Elite Series or, you know, the MLF Pro Tour. You can do it just as a personality and as a fisherman. And if I think more and more guys are going to realize that there's a lot of opportunities on the West Coast to, one, fish fun events, two, fish lakes that are actually very productive to where you're not just catching 3 or 4 fish a day. I mean, a lot of our lakes you catch 30, 40, 60 fish a day, and you might not even be competitive, but the fact is that our fisheries are very, very prolific, and the fishing is unbelievable, and guys that haven't been out here to fish and think of, oh, well, I go to Rayburn or I go to Toledo Bend or I fish, I mean, maybe with the exception of being like up north, like Champlain, and, you know, that kind of stuff. You know, a lot of these lakes, they get so much pressure in the southeast that a good day of fishing, you might catch 10 or 12 fish. Or out here, you catch 10 or 12 fish in an hour on most lakes, even on a tough bite, you know, and that's just because there maybe aren't big ones.
Right.
But I mean, the fishing is phenomenal out here. So the fishing itself has nothing to do with it. But I think guys are going to start realizing, like, hey, I don't need to fish against 300 guys in a regional out somewhere in Texas or Arkansas. I can fish in California, and I can have these opportunities, and I can fish amazing lakes. And yes, I might be traveling a bit, but you know, I mean, you'd be traveling anyway. So it's just a matter of which direction they're heading the truck in the morning. Are they going west or are they going east?
Right. Well, let me ask you this. Let's say that guys, I'll just name off a few guys. Justin Lucas, Mark Daniels Jr., Fred Rambanis, Cody Meyer. If these guys packed up and said, you know what, I'm coming west, are you open and inviting to those guys?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I fished it. I grew up with Fred.
Right.
You know, I used to fish against Mark every weekend on the Delta. Cody Meyer was a co-angler when I was fishing FLW, you know. So I mean, yeah, to see those guys, you know, whenever Cody comes out and fishes either Orville or Shasta, it's great to see him, you know. And And if nothing else, guys are excited to see him because they haven't seen him in a while. Justin Lucas, same thing. I mean, he and I traveled back to a fish off for the FLW when they had the Western Series. Him and I drove back from Lake Amistad, together. So I mean, it'd be great to see those guys. It's nice to be able to see Ish every once in a while when he's here, But a lot of my really good friends from years ago kind of had made the choice to have to move back east to fish professionally. And that was before a lot of the social media was really a big player. And I think now and moving forward, you're going to see a lot less guys want to move back east because they're going to realize that they can build their brand and they can build their sponsorship portfolio out here without having to live in Arkansas. I mean, granted, living expenses are cheaper. So you could buy a nicer house in Oklahoma than you can in California for the same amount of money, So, I mean, those kind of things may still play a factor too. But, with things like BAM growing, and what One Bass is doing out here, there's not the necessity to have to move back east to fish professionally like there was when guys like Fred did it years ago, because he knew that the only way for him to really make it then full time was to move back east, and that was just the way it had to be, and it's not that way anymore. And I think, sponsors want people that are approachable. They want people that, represent the brand, and they also want outreach. But if you have a strong social media following and you're from, Red Bluff, California, you could easily have that same outreach and be able to stay in California. It's where I live in the Bay Area is exceptionally expensive. So it doesn't make it, but it is what it is, I still get to fish. I get to go to Almanor this weekend, and fish an unbelievable smallmouth fishery against, a small field of anglers, because it's the Pro Tour, to where the lake won't get pounded. And that's what's cool about what Mark's doing. It's keeping the numbers kind of low so that we're not doing a 100-boat tournament on a small lake, or we don't have to go to Clear Lake in the Delta, because those are the only, those are the
big
standard
waterways,
fisheries that large tournaments go to. We can go to small, off the beaten path fisheries that are unbelievably good and still have a very high stakes event against really quality anglers. So if you do end up doing well, it's saying something. And whether or not guys from the Southeast see it that way, that's on them. But I think over time, the exposure and the social media is going to show that guys on the West Coast have just as much, if not more, to offer than guys, the guys from Gunnersville and Rayburn. I mean, they're unbelievable fisheries, but it's just not the same. If guys are willing to come out here and Kurt Dove, a guy who he used to fish, nationally. Yeah. He's a very successful guide. He's done it all. Guys who don't know Kurt Dove just haven't paid attention. And he's fishing all the One Bass this year and doing well on lakes like Havasu, which, is nothing like where he fishes in Texas, but he's a good angler. He's fishing, a circuit that allows him the opportunity to do well, and he's taking full advantage of it. I think, and Spencer Sheffield came out to the Open at Mojave for a couple of years in a row and did really well, and he'd never been there before. And it just goes to show that, it's drawing people from all over the place. And I think the more that we put ourselves out there, the more people are going to come. So you build it, they will come. That's what I think.
Well, I think one of the other things that's kind of missed is we have high school fishing here, we have college fishing here, and these anglers are young, hungry, coming up, and they want somewhere to go. And I think Mark is giving them someplace to go out here. And I think that the more and more we push and say, hey, sponsors, the unfortunate part is that money still pushes everything, right? So we need sponsors. We need people to come out here. We need the events to be run smoothly like they have been going. I mean, the last few events have been just absolutely almost flawless. I mean, they've been going great. But to see these young people start looking this way, to me, is so important. It's so because when you talk about, the Jared Littners that are out there and they've been fishing so many years and so many with big name companies, we have Tackle Warehouse aboard with us, and they're one of those, everybody knows who Tackle Warehouse is, and they came on board with the BAM Trail.
Yeah.
And they're out there, and it's just big name companies like that are out there that we need. Not only do we need, the endemic sponsors, we need those non-endemic sponsors to come on board and join us. I mean, it's just, love looking at the possibilities of with the West Coast right now. I think that everything you've talked about tonight, no big drama out here. We're not right now, for some reason, we're just not part of that. I know everybody looks, like you said, everybody looks at the West Coast as, yeah, that's where drama lives, but not when it comes to bass fishing, not when it comes to our organization, the organizations around us. It's just not there. But that's okay, because that's what makes it desirable for people to come out and fish. And I think these young guns coming up are going to start making a big splash. They're very competitive. Like you said, you were a young gun at one time, and you've been competitive for the last 20 plus years now, and you're still out there doing it, man. And this is what I think, seeing a person like yourself who's been a history buff about this sport too. I remember you talking about, hey, I've watched all the classics. I've watched the different shows on YouTube. What was that one that you were, oh my gosh, it was the Bassmaster events that were just the normal ones. Like, I remember you watching those, and there's so many guys that just get into that fishing, of that old style of fishing, and they want to watch it. They want to see it. They want to see where the sport's come from. They understand where it's come from. But at the same time, they know that the change has come. It's not even that it's coming. It's that it has come. We're in a different world than where this thing started. Bass fishing started one place and it's grown to another. And I think Ray Scott would have been, to this day, I think Ray Scott would have been proud of what he started and where it's gone. And I think that's been lost through some of this.
Yeah, no, I think that's, you hit it on the head. It's not a static sport, and for people that want to just live in the past and only do what they did 10, 15 years ago, it's not that way. And the way I see it, it makes it's a good thing, because it's always changing, and there's no reason why an older guy can't be just as competitive as a younger guy. It's all a matter of what he wants to spend time doing.
You fish the Delta a little bit, and I'll tell you, how many times did you come around a corner and see D. Thomas out there with his oxygen on, flipping toolies,
my butt.
Right, exactly, and still taking money.
Yeah, no, he was, and that's the thing. It's I think the drama with the forward-facing sonar is strictly for clickbait. I think that's my opinion. I think that, if an angler doesn't want to use it, that's his choice. I do think it gives a competitive advantage, but it'd be the same advantage as a guy that, adopted braid early, as opposed to somebody who stuck with mono for too long, or a guy who decided to, not use laser sharp hooks and stuck with his bronze hooks and his hook sharpener for a while, or the guy who, didn't want to have to fish deep, so he didn't decide to pick up a drop shot for years because he wanted to stay shallow. I mean, they're different situations, but it all leads to the same thing: is once the anglers realized what was most efficient and most productive, they transferred. Most guys use braid for flipping and punching and throwing frogs and topwaters, because you can cast it farther, because you have less stretch. They use sharper hooks because they're available. They use higher end reels, so they don't have to worry about getting backlashes all day. they use fluorocarbon because it's more sensitive than monofilament. I mean, there's all these
Right.
things that give an angler an advantage, and the forward-facing sonar is a big step in the direction of providing anglers information about where fish are, but you still have to figure out how to catch them. And if,
just because you can see them doesn't mean you can catch them.
No, just because you see them doesn't mean you can catch them. And if, it goes back to if everybody's fishing laydowns, one guy's going to figure out which ones most of the fish are on, and he's going to beat you. So you still have the opportunity to fish laydowns, but you're not, just because fish are on laydowns doesn't mean you're going to catch them all. And I think the forward-facing sonar is more drama to drive views on YouTube, and I think it's sad. And I think some of the guys who are taking advantage of that it's a little bit embarrassing, in my opinion. And I just wish that I'm glad that there's nobody out here that's making a big stink about it. It gets used at probably every event, but it's not made a highlight reel, and in terms of, guys complaining about live coverage because guys are looking at the screen, you were looking at the back of the guy's head all the time, whether he was throwing a crankbait or flipping. You're not getting a forward-facing view of him just because he's not using forward-facing sonar. And I mean, I don't know. To me, it boggles my. I'm excited about anything new that comes along, because it's one more thing to try to learn and master. And I just feel like a lot of guys are discounting the fact that it's a cool tool, and I'm just glad that we don't have to talk about it all the time. This is the most I've talked about it in probably 2 years, to be honest.
Right. Well, and innovation is always going to be a part of this sport, and nobody can deny that. I mean, look at spear point hooks, right? Did you ever think you'd see one of those? But it's out there, and it's doing well, and it's one of the most. It's a great hook, right? But it's innovation. Nobody else thought of it. It's always been a round bend hook, right?
You know what spear point does is it drives plier sales, because you can't get those things out without a pair of pliers.
There you go.
It's amazing.
See? One scratches the other one's back.
It's amazing, and then I'm fortunate to work with some really good companies. I work with Spear Point, I work with P-Line, and St. Croix and Seven Reels, and Spear Point and Seven Reels are the reels themselves not as much, but the rods are all made in the U.S.A. So it's a family-owned U.S. company that's based in Wisconsin, makes rods, in the factory there, giving jobs to Americans, and they're unbelievable rods. And it's and those have come from relationships that I've built on the West Coast, and the fact that St. Croix realized that the sales on the West were not as strong as they were in other parts of the country. So instead of just ignoring the West Coast, they built a team around West Coast anglers, try to help build their brand awareness, and now sales are increasing because more guys are seeing St. Croix rods being used, and that's the same thing that other endemic sponsors will see if they support the West Coast, is that it might not be the same, overall number of sales, but you're still increasing sales by increasing your awareness on the West Coast. And I think a lot of endemic and non-endemics are going to see that. And with what Mark's doing, and building new circuits, I think that's just going to help perpetuate that, get more kids involved. And then, 10 years from now, we've got twice as many bass fishermen as we do now. That's what I would hope to happen.
Well, I hope that happens too. And I hope this thing, I don't even want to say I hope. We are going to put, I'm out here working with Mark as much as I can to make this thing grow, to get the West Coast. I believe we deserve it. I believe it belongs here. I believe the bass fishing has nowhere to go but up from here. It's been, I don't want to say kept down so long out here on the West Coast, but I think it's just been in the shadows so long that people don't look at it. They're not aware of what it actually is. They think it's a bunch of guys sitting on the shore, drinking a cold one and throwing their line out there and sitting all day. And it's just not true.
No, it's not.
What we do, how we do it, and what we bring to communities when we come to these communities is absolutely outstanding. And it's something that these community should support. And I believe that, Almanor is going to see that, and a lot of other companies have seen it. We're going back to Almanor for more than one reason. They wanted us to come back. They want to see us there. Boardman, Oregon wants to see us there. They're like, no, you come here. We want you to bring your people. We want you to bring your event. We want you to bring the exposure to us, and that's what we bring when we come, and that's what these events really are. And the pro tours, even the pro-ams, the pro-ams allow you, if you're a guy who's out there going, I might want to try it, come fish a pro-am. They're easy to get into. Anybody can join them. Throw your money up there and see if you can take everybody else's money with you. That's what they're there for. The pro tours you got to actually qualify for, and you got to go compete against some pretty darn good anglers on a regular basis. But hey, anybody at any time can win. So, Zach, thanks for coming on and doing this tonight. This is something totally different. Normally, we've always talking about fishing. We're always, pushing, how to do better and how to get more fish and all that. And I hope that people understand that sometimes you need to talk a little bit about being professional and what this actually means out here. The BAM Trail is setting a standard, and that standard is leave the drama somewhere else, come out and just go fishing, have fun, and enjoy the lifestyle. And that's what this really is all about out here on the West Coast. Is we're hungry and we want it, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, no, and like you were saying too, Mark did name Michael Bray as the new tournament director, and a lot of guys wouldn't recognize that name, but Michael Bray is one of the most upstanding, honest individuals I've met, and he did a lot of he did a lot for Tourney X last year when it was still Wild West Bass, or when Wild West Bass was around, and he personally went through every fish, and he would reject fish that were questionable for photos. And he rejected a couple of my fish and just, called me and said, hey, that photo wasn't clean enough, or I couldn't quite, you didn't get enough of this, or you didn't get enough of that. And he is not afraid to call it like it is, and be a tournament director and stand by what he says, and not let guys, push him around. He is a really good guy. And I think guys that fish tournaments with him as a tournament director are going to see the value of having somebody like that involved, and just add to the legitimacy of the whole thing too, because Michael Bray is a good guy, and he when he makes a decision, he stands by it, and he's not afraid to tell somebody, hey, this is wrong, this is right, you were out, this one didn't quite work out, and it cost me a couple good placements last year, but it was my own fault that he called me out on, and I was like, you know what, you're right. I'm going to do better next time, and make sure, it's a good addition. So I think Mark made a good call. Absolutely.
Good. And that's definitely a positive that we wanted to see. I stand behind everything you just said right there. Michael is a great kid. He's a young up and comer in this sport. He really wants to be here. He wants to be in this industry and taking this role. I'm going to work with him every tournament, so it's awesome.
He's gonna put you in line.
No, he won't. But it's
you wait.
No, but it's one of those things. I love being a part of this organization, and given the opportunity that Mark has given me, and it's I love working with you guys. That as much as anybody else, and this is going to be moving forward. It's always going to be trying to give you guys the best possible tournament I can give you. So with Michael coming on and doing this, Mark stepping back, being behind the scenes a little bit more, but still there, you're always going to be able to get hold of him. And us being out there, these are just going to get better and better and better. So if you're on the fence at all, just stop. Just come on out, be a part of it. I guarantee you will not be disappointed.
I agree.
Zach, thanks for doing this. We really appreciate it. Thanks for talking about a subject that's a little tougher to talk about. Some guys don't want to take the hit, don't want to say the things, but you've got the experience, and I think that people will have to listen to what you have to say too. So,
well, I appreciate it. Thank you, Ed. Yeah, and you guys can follow me at bassangler_CA at Instagram, or Zack Thompson Pro Angler at Facebook. Send me a friend request or follow along, and I'll keep you in the loop.
Absolutely. All right, Zach, thank you very much. I'm going to sign off. Everybody, thanks for tuning in tonight. We really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed this show. And yeah, we'll see you in a couple weeks with the next one, and it will probably have the winner of the album.